right, ladies and gentlemen, here we are. We are live for the Provoke Coach podcast. As always, I have a very special guest with us today. I always love having fellow coaches and just the mindset, when you start following people, they're your tribe, they're your people, that you can listen to them and you can scroll through good scrolling in social media and listen to their message. So thank you so much for showing up today. Jamie Thurber, thank you for being on the Provoke Coach podcast.
Hi. Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm excited.
Absolutely. Well, look, a lot of people may be following you already. They know who you are. They know where you come from, but maybe not everybody does. And I would like to really kind of tell people what I know a little bit about you and maybe learn some things myself. So who is Jamie right now?
Oh, right now, I just cut all my hair off. So I feel like I'm a person.
That's awesome. So you got a new do recently. That's great.
After 5 years of long hair. Who am I right now? I mean, I feel like once you come into this space of personal development, if you're doing it right, you're always evolving into a different version of you, but the groundwork is the same, right? The foundation is the same. And I think that's something that I definitely stand for. So I work with people as a coach, and I also do inspirational, motivational things on all the interwebs. Just so anybody who wants some sort of inspiration can find it and can have that at their fingertips. I believe in working hard, but I also believe in taking care of yourself, because I didn't for a really long time. So I had to learn that the hard way. And I work with mainly business owners, but I've never niched down to a specific kind of person, or specific industry, I should say. It's more like they come with similar drive and desire. It tends to be. And I help people figure out how to manage the difference between the two, and also enjoy their lives while letting things build and grow. And because I think
we talk about the niche thing for a second, because I would have to agree with and I think I agree with your opinion on this. Why didn't you specifically get niched out? Because you hear that a lot with the super coaches, what? You don't have a niche? What's happening? I mean, can you talk about that a little bit?
Oh, I would love to. Yeah, because I've been doing this for over 8 years. Yeah. And that's what everyone says. That's the way you get successful. That's the way you get clients. It always felt really fake to me. Yep. It always felt really fake to me to say, and now some people this is their person and this is the only kind of person they want to work with.
Sure.
And that's great. I'm not, dogging on that. That was just never me. I've always worked really well with men and women, with different industries, with these different things. And so it was more like I had to learn to trust myself and not what some big coach was telling me I should be doing.
Yeah.
Instead, trust myself and the process with the client. Either it's a fit or it's not. I know who I can help and who I can't help. And I think that just comes, with some confidence building. But I could just think of how many, if I would have, maybe I would have made more money at this point. I have no idea, but I know that there's a lot of people I probably would have shut the door on before I even spoke to them. If I thought I only tunnel vision just one.
And they could have been in your niche too, right? Because I did too. When I first started coaching, I'm like, all right, you have to be very specific. And what I found is that a lot of business owners needed lifestyle coaching. And then all of a sudden they became awesome in business because they became awesome at home. And then I'm thinking to myself, well, geez, if I just would have went with just business coaching, I would have never gotten that guy or that gal to do that type of work. Mm-hmm. For you, who is your ideal client? Who is somebody that you get just super excited about when you get them enrolled in your program? And we'll get into your program in a little bit. Who is that ideal client? Who do you get super pumped about?
I get super pumped about really high achievers, really high productivity people who there's an itch that they know that there's more to it than this, but there's also this fear that they can't have both. They can't relax and have fun and have a life and also be this high achiever. And it's funny because a lot of people assume that that's just my male clients, but it's female clients just as much, and And so that's my favorite part, because I'm like, stick with me, kid. We'll figure this out. And then you're going to be like, damn. Yes. It's really, a trust factor, but that's one of those things I know is possible if someone's willing to commit. I'm not going to ask you not to do as much. I'm not going to ask you not to be as, badass at your job as you are. It's just more of like showing what else is possible. Those are my favorites.
Now, on the flip side, who's your worst client? Who do you, I guess, in I should probably rephrase that, because they probably wouldn't be your client. You wouldn't conduct business with them if you truly hated them. But who's the pain in the ass?
Probably it's a lack of wanting to face certain things about oneself. It tends to be management, I'd say, is probably the biggest culprit of this for my business owners, is they don't want to have the conversations with the people that they manage. And so as a result, we have these, roundabout continuing conversations. And that's where they know they're being a pain in the ass, at that point. But it's more of just kind of that icky struggle piece, but everybody tends to get through it, and so it's like, that's probably the worst part. It's just not being honest about it,
Yeah. And those people typically turn out all right anyways. You just have to have multiple roundabout conversations, with them to finally take action. But those are sometimes the superstars. Would you agree? Like, it may have taken them a minute, but then once they've really taken off, they really kick ass. Is that right for you as well? Or?
Yeah. And I think that's kind of the big ticket too about the way that I coach. And I think you do this very similarly. I don't have a one size fits all answer for people.
Yeah.
Everybody's so different. And so, my one person who might go straight to their employee and handle the situation, that's great for them. My person who roundabout went the, squirrely way there, it's what they needed to do.
Yeah.
It's what they needed to do to make that change, to understand that part of themselves, whatever it was. And so, because everyone is so different, it always ends up working out well and being the right time to where that's like the actual lasting change, which is what we're going for anyway.
Yeah. Well, and I guess that's, the end result is really the clear indicator of them following through, not necessarily the path that it took to get them there. Correct?
Very true. Yes, that's very true.
Do you think that's a mistake that just average, people make in life and in business in general, is that they think they have to go a certain way, and that they, if they maybe can't or they won't, but yet they can still get the same result? Mm-hmm. Are people kind of frozen with that? Is it a problem?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I think that we all kind of face that in some ways, because you're hit with so much information, and in the media and all of these like gurus or whoever, I know I can think back to even just a really before gurus were a thing on the internet. Right. The example of, you graduate from high school, you go to college, you get married, you white picket fence, have kids. That's what you do. And if you don't do that, you're wrong. Yeah. And I'm over here 20 at, I'm not 25 now, but at the time at 25 going, oh my God, I've done everything wrong. I've done none of these things. And so that path though, and if you think about all the other areas in our lives where we think we have to take this specific path to success or happiness or whatever, where it's like, man, if I would have known then none of that stuff even mattered. The path matters, right? That's where your journey is where all the best parts happen. But
where all the lessons are. Yeah, it's where all the lessons are.
Get to the place from all kinds of different directions.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and I guess let's talk about your program. Current day right now, I know you've had, you got a lot going on. I mean, you have your podcast, you have Operation Do, which is, awesome in my opinion. Let's talk about your programs a little bit. What is it with your programs? I guess let's talk about that first, and then maybe the podcast and some other things as well.
Cool. So Operation Do was born a long time ago as just this funny thing that I used to do with myself when I would have something I needed to tackle. And I would call it, like, on the top of my paper, I would write like Operation Body Shop. I used to work in the body shop. So like, or Operation this, like whatever the thing was I was trying to tackle, that's what I would just call it for myself. And so when I started this group, it was about how to do. And now it's kind of transferred a bit into more also being. It's like how to be this thing. Because like the doing part, and there's still this huge chunk of like 300 videos about the doing. And then we have putting in the being. But for me, it was just, I learned that we all, especially people who are driven in their own way, are so hard on themselves. And it's so easy to assume that you're never actually getting anything done, even though you are, like, you are, but the voice in your head tells you otherwise, or we feel like we're going around in circles. And so that group was really born as a place for people to jump in and have a place to plug into, and talk about that normal stuff, but then also just be able to get real life in examples of things in every area. So what I would do is every single week was a different area of life, right? And so the topics would change. And so they're all categorized in these cute little cool columns or whatever, but it's a really well-rounded space. So there's over 450 videos in there. And it's like a library, like any topic you can think of, any area of life. And then there's, 30-minute to hour-long trainings on everything. And
so it's a course then, it sounds like. Yeah,
it's pretty
course before the course.
Right. It's like a self-led deal, really. And that's why I could have, and I thought about separating everything at one point, but I just was like, like you said before, if all business owners only needed business, then that would be a funny, different thing. But it all just plays into each other so well. It's this thing I call intentional living, like the wheel of intentional living. So like everything comes together and is working together so that you can roll, right? So the wheel can roll. And so in that space, that's the focus. And so it's been a labor of love for many years to make all of that content. And it's really a special place to me, honestly. And within that now, we used to always have a weekly live, and it's changed a bit now to having lifetime access to the library. But within that space, you still have access to me. You just have to be willing to ask the questions.
Right.
But the people who are interacting and asking questions are getting like pocket coaching all day long. So it's just a matter of who wants to do what inside the space.
Well, and it's interesting, I was watching, big time influencer, and he was talking about giving away all your best stuff for free. And it was an interesting thing that set in my head, because I was just like, well, the monetary side, the business side of me comes out, and it's like, well, okay, sure. But then you got your hook and you got all this, you said it was a labor of love. I have that as well with, a course that I built. It's the first course that I built. And it's interesting that you love to build content. I've seen a lot of your videos. I've heard your podcast. You do it out of love. Can you talk about that for a second? Because you give out an incredible amount of content for not a dime. And you talked about pocket coaching. You give so much value out there. What's with that? Is that just who you are, like as a person? Is there something behind that in business that you want to be able to help them with? Talk to us a little bit.
Yeah, I think that when I came into the coaching or like the online business space, do you remember back when it was, or maybe I think you were there at that time, when everybody was in groups? Everybody was in coaching groups on Facebook, and everybody talked about themselves in coaching groups. So that was the thing to do. And I just remember working with a few people who had made, they're still eons, like they keep growing, I keep growing, we keep going. And I remember her telling me, Kat Latorzo is her name. She goes by Katrina Ruth now. And she was just like, what is the harm in saying what pops into your head that you feel is going to be supportive to someone? What's the harm in that? Because it is of value, and it's different than someone paying you to coach them. They're getting information, you're helping them, but it's not ever the same.
It is.
It comes similar to, you're a coach, I'm a coach, there's 1,000 coaches, but we're all different. Something about you might, this person might like that, they might not, whatever. Everyone resonates with different things. And so I think it makes me feel really good. And that's always been what's sold anything I've ever had. All of my private clients, literally my entire business, have come to me in a private message, typically not interacted on any of my content. I've never even seen their name before. And they're like, okay, I'm ready to work with you. And I'm like, what?
Yeah.
It's always been from the sharing and from the value piece. And, and then I like a couple years down the road, really started studying Tony Robbins and studying Gary Vaynerchuk and those guys. And that's what they do too. And it's just like, well, you know what? I feel like when you're doing something that you're so passionate about, there's always kind of the two sides of the coin. You want to tell everyone all the things because you're so excited about it.
Yeah.
And at the same time, you still need to make money, and that's your job. And so I had to figure out a way to do that. So the writing and the podcast, and honestly, the podcast I just started because sometimes I just have things that I need to vocalize and it's easier.
Yeah. Well, and it's so awesome that you say that, because I think the best people out there share the most of their thoughts, whether that's, breaking out the cell phone, doing the videos, like you said, doing the podcast. It's not that we love to hear ourselves talk. It's that we need to. That's a part of us, and whether it is healing from something or becoming a better version of ourselves, like it's almost, I don't know if you're into like Marvel comics or anything like that, but like Black Panther, like awesome movie. Well, he gets hit and his suit absorbs energy and it allows him to be stronger. And I feel that I'm a lot like that. Like the more content that I put out and not even care, like, and just pump it out, just get these different messages, that it'll work, I mean, do you feel like that as well? Like, because you just said it, like, and a lot of people don't do that in business. They want to put something out and say, all right, now how many views does it get? How many likes? How much money is this generating? What's happening right now with one video,
Yeah. And here's the deal. It's easy to get caught up in that. And when I've had lulls in my business, when I've had like dips down in sales or in people showing interest or signing up for anything, it's been what I've learned. Cause again, you strategize on what you notice.
Yep.
What I've learned is if I was okay, what's the purpose of this? I'm going to sell this thing. And I got too much into the why and the strategy behind it. It didn't work. It doesn't work for me. If I'm not like jazzed up about something and just talking about it and for the sake of talking about it, it really normally doesn't work for me, which sometimes sucks if you're not you're not always in the best mood or whatever.
Right.
That's why we do the other things we do as far as the daily practices and things like that. Right. Yeah. So
exactly.
That's really what it is that anytime I get too far in, and it's easy to, because the world's telling you again, that you're supposed to be tracking all of these things.
Right.
We get 1,000 DMs telling you should be getting more likes on your picture. Why aren't you getting more likes? Let me fix this for you. And you're like, stop talking to me. No, I'm just saying the words because it feels right.
Right. Well, and that's what's interesting, when you put things out in social media, is that you do have massive amounts of people. I'm sure your DMs are lit up, just the same as mine, and maybe even more because, you're more popular than I am. You get these, well, hey, would you like more subscribers? Well, yeah, duh. That's a pretty dumb question. Of course I would. You mean, do I want to pay you for it? And, like, it's really interesting. But you also have mainstream media that teaches you and tells you that as well, not just the bots, right? Coming after. Now in business, let's talk about that for a second, because you're a business coach. So there's somebody listening right now that's like, oh, okay, Jamie, yeah, hunky dory. So don't care about any of the KPIs. Don't worry about any of the stats. Don't worry about any of the numbers. Just go with it. How does that work? Because I do some business coaching as well, and that's a different animal. You know this as well as I do, than lifestyle coaching and other things. What do you have to tell that guy or gal that's listening right now about the stats or the KPIs?
It's tricky, man. So there's a couple. It really depends. I tell people, if you're wanting to be the brand, like I am, like the brand is me, I am the brand, then these things are things you need to figure out how to work around and make part of your day-to-day, like how I just open than you do. Just open the phone and say the words.
Yeah.
It doesn't just happen overnight, right? You work that in. But if it's a brick and mortar or it's one thing that I find that I've done that other people have done that's difficult is just hiring out social media to just a random person that doesn't know your brand, doesn't understand your company. It rarely works. Because even when we're doing case studies on like what kind of post works best for this salon, I had this influx a few years ago and I got multiple hairstylists like out of nowhere. I had all these hairstylists I was working with. I was like, okay, that's cool.
Yeah.
So salon pops into my head, right? So you do these case studies of what kind of posts are getting more traction. So we pay attention in that way. That's where I think is the best idea, because you can't, not every business is the same, and even not every salon is the same, right? So you kind of have to find out what your people, your, town, your whatever are looking at. And you can't figure that out without trying, without doing some trial and error, without doing some things and then figuring out what's working and what's not. And so that's always what I tell people, is to really just stay curious. But in the social media world, you have to be patient with a lot of it. Sometimes you have an overnight deal. Sometimes that happens, but not all. If you're long-term building the brand, it doesn't always go that way, right? So I think those are the two things, is being patient and realizing that you have to test your audience and figure out what works. And it takes legwork. That's the other part. I remember trying really hard to let people figure out how to make my social media grow.
Right.
But you have to go interact, you have to go search. I still search hashtags all the time and go follow people, because I'm like, oh, and now it's more so where I'm like, she's really cool or he's really cool, I want to see their stuff.
Right.
But it takes more, there's that horrible thing that happened at one point where people are like, oh, this girl on the internet, she's so stupid, she just posts pictures of herself. And I'm like, that girl's making a lot of money and putting a lot of work. Like, you don't know how much work is putting in to liking and commenting on people's stuff. Like, it's a big deal.
Well, and that's, I think that, a lot of times we don't realize. I know that I had a real hard time with this at the beginning, because I'm thinking to myself, like, okay, and I had hired a marketing coach. They had taught me all about how everything works. And here I was just posting and dipping, getting on with my day, just posting and going, not really interacting except for liking stupid shit, things that entertain me. I'd be like, oh, that's cool. And then I didn't realize what was happening with algorithms. And now you're going to see all these types of posts and all that kind of stuff. So it was a big learning curve for me. So you learn this with business. You coach your clients on really being aware, but it sounds like not being obsessed with these small, stupid outcomes that mean nothing right now until later on down the road. Right. And when that equates to business.
Yeah. And it's also knowing where your audience is too. Like, I want to make a note of that, because with small business owners, that's a big deal, right? Like, everyone says, oh, you need to Instagram. Not everybody's on Instagram, and not everybody's ideal person is on Instagram, and so I'll use this RV shop I work with as an example. To build their brand amongst travelers and other brands that RV companies use, Instagram's great for that.
Yeah.
To build people who are coming to them to fix their RV, Facebook is where it's at. And so you kind of have to, Instagram's cool and TikTok's great, but you got to figure out where your people are. And so that's the other thing too, is that
your ideal client, right?
Yeah. And people jump around too much because somebody somewhere told them that they should, and so it's really, like I said, the long game, but I think it's the long game in the right place, and treating it differently. Like, we treat the Instagram differently because we're trying to get the brands for the RV company, right? And then we treat the Facebook differently because we're trying to get the purchaser, the consumer.
I remember and I'm going to kind of change the subject sort of, but in a way, but with business owners, I remember you were really big on get shit done. at one time. And that was like a slogan that when I heard that, I thought of you. And this was maybe a while back. Was it a program that you had designed, or was this a small mini course that you were doing with your clients at that time?
So I was all about productivity. That was the main thing that I used, was like, let's figure out how to get more shit done, because everybody wants to get more shit done. But in order to get more shit done, it's all this mindset work that comes along with it. Right. So I still say it. It's still the thing, but it's really hard to market. Nobody lets you market it when you're using the word shit all the time.
Right.
So that's what Operation Do started as.
Yeah.
It was the Get Shit Done group.
Oh, that's awesome.
And so back when I felt like I needed to have a 5-second pitch to someone, like an elevator pitch, that's what it was. Hey, I'm Jamie Thurber. I help people get shit done.
Nice. Now,
and like, what? And then I can go into whatever side of it I want to.
Right. So then that's what evolved into Operation Do then, and definitely in making it all about accomplishments. Do you think that people focus less on the results, and do they focus on the wrong things and not the results? Because it seems like your approach is like, again, we don't care how you get there, just, get the result. Is that a part of your findings?
I think that it's that people don't acknowledge their results very often. And that's something that, especially my male clients, I'll be honest, like my male clients are way worse about this. They don't give themselves credit for anything that they're accomplishing. Yeah. So it's very difficult to keep building on your own belief in yourself and your own confidence levels, which does increase everything else in your world, when you're never giving yourself credit for the things that you've finished and the way that you got there. I think it's important to learn, because that's then how we can, I'm big on reflection. I think we get to a place and it worked or it didn't, and we reflect on why, because then that way, that's how you learn, right? That's how you can close up little gaps, and you can make it faster the next time. That's the efficiency piece. So yeah, we want to definitely get to the doing and the done, and acknowledge what's going on there. But it's very much so, like when I teach people about planning, which is a huge piece of what I do, because I approach it super differently. It's like, let's get to this, what worked and what didn't. Every single week, we look at what worked and what didn't. Right. Tweak so that we can get to the other side of it, because that's the most important part. Otherwise, you're never going to know why something's not working. Like, I think it's important. Things are working, and sometimes people just bang, 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 bang. But if you pay attention to why it's working, then you're guaranteed most likely for it to continue to do so and not just be a fluke, right? So there's a bit of both for sure in it.
Well, and it's funny that you said that. It's the wins and losses, and people maybe aren't keeping track. Sure, feels good to win, and then you win again, and you're moving and you're doing what's necessary, but how the heck did you get there? Because if you don't know, then here pretty soon it's 30 days down the line, and you didn't really know how you were winning before, and now you're losing, and then you're frustrated, and then you're pissed, and then you're, the world's going to end. Do you find that people kind of let loose a little bit? Do they let their foot off the gas? I know that this is, in my experience, sometimes when my coaching clients are just crushing it, they get a little loose, and they sometimes stop doing the things that got them there in the first place. And we got to snap them out of it really quick. Do you deal with that as well?
Yeah, absolutely. I deal with that as a person myself. I think if we don't stay consistent on our daily things, that it's really every single big success that anyone has is made up of the basic little things that they do every day. Yeah. And so there'll be times I'll have a client, she'll be killing it and all this stuff will go on. And then, one day she'll call and she'll be like sobbing, like panicking, all the world is ending. Right. And I'm like, and we had just had a call like a couple days before. So I'm going, what in the hell is going on? Like, we didn't talk about any of this. And so one of the first things I always ask is, how's your daily routine going? Like, how's your mornings? I haven't been doing it. I've been going to bed late. And, I haven't eaten good all week. And it's like, they're basic things. And when you look at people, there was this thing that I recorded a long time ago. It was right when Gary Vee had just like popped off and was really big, right? And I was all about it. And so he was he had hired a personal trainer to travel with him.
Yeah.
And I was listening to, at the time I was traveling to a ton of functions too. And I was listening to these people talk about him. And I was realizing they were trying to mimic his hustle, right? Well, what nobody was seeing was what he was obviously showing you is how invested he was in his personal wellness, because he had a trainer that was traveling with him to make sure he was eating right, sleeping, working out. But these other guys weren't even seeing that at all. And I'm like, the reason he's able to be this stellar is because he's taking care of the other things in his life too. But it's nobody wants to talk about that.
Sure.
Like that's not sexy, I guess, or whatever. Like, so.
Well, nobody, it goes back to like what you were saying, nobody really wants to do the work. They just want the results, and they don't, and here we go. You want something, but yet you don't want to do what it takes to actually get there. Now, where do you see this, for you in the future? I mean, do you have some things coming up? Are these going to be more speaking events, books? What are I know you got something stashed up your sleeve, right?
I have a few things stashed. There's this combination of get shit done. So like, I don't like excuses. I don't like, if you don't want to change something, you're accepting it, and that's totally fine. But then there's this level of compassion that I feel like a lot of people lack that comes into the play too. So there's this different level of that's been coming out of me. So I had a book halfway written, and I sent it to my editor, who's also a friend of mine, and she was like, Jamie, I love you, but this isn't you anymore. This isn't how you talk to people anymore. And I'm like, damn. So it's true. And it's great though, because then there's still the lessons in the story. So we're revamping it to have it be more of a comprehensive guide and not just like an ass kicking, because it's kind of what it was like to begin with.
Right.
But it's more of now, I don't want to just, there's too much in the world of people getting you all jazzed up and knowing you need to make a change, and then they're not there to guide you through it. And that's my thing I don't like. And so that's a big piece for me. Like if I do a speaking engagement or I do an event, I want your information because I want to be there to help you get to the other side of it.
Yeah, you're invested in them, right? Like it's not just, you're not just doing it for a gig. You're doing it because you want to be there with them like every step of the way.
Well, and it's important. I mean, there was just too many times I would see people spend a ton of money and a ton of time and then come out the other side frozen and wondering why it wasn't working. And I'm going, well, tell me what happened. I'm thinking, well, this person or this event just like broke you down into all these pieces, and then it's over. And then like, what do you do? Right. So that was always a big piece. And so that's where the book kind of had to get reborn into, like I said, almost like a comprehensive guide. So when that's going to be done, I am not setting a date on myself on that one. But so that's happening. I've actually recently opened, I just posted about it or emailed about it yesterday, actually, but I've opened up more space for private clients. I realized that, well, I didn't realize, I've known this, but it really is where my joy lies in my, weekly coaching calls with people. So opened up more space than I've had open in a while. So that's exciting. Yeah. I'm excited about that. And just really a different level of sharing. There's just a lot that my life is these days that I haven't told everybody all the way. It's not like I'm lying, but like I spent a lot of time on this property that I live on now and this house doing like weird shit that nobody knows about. They're like, oh, you're this badass woman who's running this business. I'm like, yeah. And I'm also, gardening and
that's awesome.
Growing all this stuff and trying to get this house to be a home and just all of these things that are really true to me too. And so I think there's an evolution of how you can be this.
You'll share more of that do you think it'll bleed into other parts of your business, or is that going to be more of your brand, you think?
I think what that will do is open up that to more people who feel like they're the only one, right?
Yeah.
Or they can't be all these things. That's always been a thing ever since I was a little kid. is it's, my dad, you can do anything you want to do. And I'm like, oh, really? And I just took that and ran with it. And so there's just too much of saying you can't be all of these things. And it's like, well, why not? I know you follow me on Instagram for a long time, and that's always been a thing about my Instagram page. Yeah. People, why do you post pictures like that? I'm like, because I can. Like, why can't I be a woman and a business owner? Like, I don't understand, so I think that'll be even more of just like a place that people can feel at home. And even if it's, just in the content, that's what I'm really feeling drawn to right now is sharing that stuff as well. And it does come into the business because it comes into the coaching, and into the different kinds of clients and things like that. So I think it's going to be, I'm excited.
Awesome. Where did all this come from? I mean, where all of a sudden did you start coaching? I mean, have you just always been, in the coaching space, or a leader or a manager? You have this unique lifestyle coaching, but yet business coaching at the same time, and get shit done and kick ass in business. So there's two sides. Where did it all come from?
Yeah, that's a good question. So I always wanted to work when I was growing up. Like, that's all I wanted to do. I didn't want to go to, once in high school, I didn't want to go to school. I just wanted to work. So I would learn from the business owners, the places that I worked. I would always ask a lot of questions and pay attention. I ran it wasn't my company, but I ran the first office of a company when I was 17. And so I walked in, there was no systems, there was no programs. And so I just had to figure it out.
Yeah.
And so, that's what I did. I learned how to use QuickBooks. I learned what to do and made these systems and was able to do that in a way that I also was like going in early and getting my work done, and then taking the phone out to the pool that was at that home office, and answering the phone from there if I needed to. So it was like I was doing the lifestyle business before I knew it was a thing. And so throughout the years, I really love how small businesses work. It's always been a big part of my heart. And so I've managed businesses. I was an insurance adjuster for a while, and then I managed auto body shops. And a company that was growing when I joined, but they doubled, maybe even a little bit more than that in size in the time that I was there as their operations manager. And when I left there, it was out of the blue. It was not an planned thing. There was something had transpired there, and then we decided to part ways. And I didn't know what I was going to do. But I started going into other companies and saying, hey, let me help you organize your files and figure this out. What can we do? And into other body shops and things like that. And I found an online coach. I was Googling, online to make money online. It's and I found a coach. Her name was Susie Romans, and she's still a coach today. And borrowed money to pay for her. And she taught me about how I could run a business online and what I could do and how I could reach people. And I started by being a project manager for people virtually.
Nice.
So I would get hired by a company and I would help them with their projects. We would use various management systems, and I would virtually manage their subcontractors, the moving pieces, and their clients, and use all those management skills. And during that time, I realized that a lot of the stuff and things was easy and flowing, but the conversations with the clients, who was the business owner, were about their fears, their blocks, their struggles, their desires. Those were the things that were preventing things from growing or being better or whatever.
Right. Yeah.
One day I was talking to someone and they were like, Jamie, that you're coaching, that's business coaching. That's what you're doing. And I'm like, oh, wow, that's my favorite part.
Yeah.
Because the management part, it's one of those things I'm really, really good at. But at this point, the last thing I want to do. Right.
Right.
So I did the online business management for about 2 years. And so it was about 6 years ago that I started saying, nope, I'm just going to do coaching. Yeah. So I've been just doing coaching. There's been a couple of projects over the years that I've helped people with, but most of it is the business coaching. So
wow, that's awesome. So, I mean, you just naturally gravitated towards it. You just did naturally what you're good at, right? And helping people, find these bottlenecks in your business, but also in their personal lives as well, it sounds like, and those kind of mesh together, for them to be a lot better.
Yeah, very true. It's something that I don't even really know how to describe it, but I've always had this ability to, even in my own life, and sometimes it sucks for myself, but I can see all the reasons, all the points of view, why things happened the way they did and why, they transpired like that. And to be able to offer that perspective to somebody is huge.
Yeah.
And so I learned how to let myself do that. And now how to strategically, obviously not like throw it in someone's face because not everybody's ready for that.
Right.
But to be able to utilize that gift to really help people develop and change their own interpersonal relationships and how they're conducting business and all of those things. So it's been a cool evolution. Honestly, it's been pretty neat.
Wow. And that's fantastic that you get to do what you love, and like you said, you were kind of morphing into that anyways, right? With really coaching people. And like you said, management is tough. Leadership is extremely hard. Coaching is kind of getting parts of those and then, kind of flipping the script, because you can't, as a coach, fix the problem completely. You have to give the power to the client to fix the problem, and that's just the power of the coach, is they can't really step on the field. They can get in there in the business. Now, you do everything from an operational standpoint. Is that so? If somebody wanted to hire you, is it mostly in operations that you focus your efforts on? Is that like your sweet spot then?
We tend to do about a little bit of everything, really.
Okay.
Everything from hiring to SOPs for businesses to best practices, marketing.
Yeah.
And when I worked at the body shop, my boss, and I can say this because he would agree, was very cheap. Like he did not want to pay money for most of anything. But when you own a business like that, people are coming in the door constantly to sell you marketing.
Yeah.
He made me take every meeting.
Yeah.
Because he knew I would learn.
Yeah.
And at the time it was annoying, right? Because I had a bunch of other things to do.
Sure, yeah.
But now it was a few years ago I realized, because somebody asked me, how do you know all this stuff? And I'm like, how do I know? And it's from sitting in on probably 100 marketing descriptions and meetings and presentations that people had come up with for us, and learning those systems. And so it's a pretty wide range that I'm able to help people with from my experience over the years, which is really nice. So one thing now that I'm looking forward to learning more about is like finance and mortgages, not so that I can do that for people, but so that I can guide them on who they need to talk to and what they need to do. Because as business owners, it can be tricky.
Right.
And I keep running into that with people where they're like trying to buy a house and they're having a hard time because they don't have paycheck stubs, or whatever. So that's the side that I don't have as much knowledge on, that I'm looking forward to getting some more.
And adding, kind of to your arsenal then.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow, that's fantastic. Now, I guess, and, I could talk to you all day long, but a couple of coaches geeking out, we could probably do this for 2-3 hours. But what advice do you have, I guess, for small business owners? Because you primarily work with small business, mid-sized businesses, enterprise. What do you work with?
Yeah, usually, and I always just kind of go by employee size. I think under 100 employees.
Under 100 employees.
Usually,
Got it. And so what advice do you have for these business owners? Like, we talked about giving our best stuff away, and you can't give them all the secrets. And frankly, we just don't have all that time to tell them everything that they need to do. But if you could give them one good piece of information, what would that be, to help them?
I think it would be to be very clear with yourself about what it is that you want from the business and your team.
Yeah.
9 times out of 10, people come to me frustrated or mad, or they've spent a lot of money and years feeling like they're banging their heads against the wall. And it's because they have no idea what it is they're actually trying to accomplish. And what I mean by that is they may know what they're trying to sell or whatever, but they want it a certain way. In their head, they have this vision, and it's not as clear as they may think. And therefore, you can't expect things to transpire the way that are going to make you happy if you don't know what that is. And so spending some time on that, it's super helpful. The biggest thing, and then reevaluating it regularly.
Yeah.
I know what, for a long time, what I wanted out of my team. And then, time goes by, and every probably quarter I reevaluate, because everything changes, and maybe it doesn't, but at least I know. And so that's a big piece, is that too many people will go too far down the rabbit hole before they really realize, oh, I was never super clear what I wanted from that person. So how could they provide what I needed? And that causes, I think, getting that under your belt first will prevent a lot of frustration and a lot of money spent.
Yeah. And a lot of time, a lot of effort, a lot of money spent. Because you're right, they do get too far down the rabbit hole. Business owners especially, because they don't have things like core values. They don't have things that are lined up. They don't know really. I mean, they know their product, they know their service, but they don't know that end result on their mission. And it's really kind of hard to stand behind something when you don't have that. That's such great advice. And get 100% clear. And I guess for people that are listening, it don't matter how long that takes you to get clear, right? I mean, there's not a time limit on getting clear. And then you said you reevaluate every quarter. So every 3-4 months, you reevaluate that, right?
I do. Yeah. Especially with having a team of people around me, because you wouldn't believe how many times somebody is like, well, that person's not, delivering. And I'm like, well, what is it that you need from them? Did you share that? They don't know. And so if my vision of what I want my blogs to look like changed, and I didn't take the time to fully explain it, then, how my frustration potentially is from nothing, it's silly. So that's a big piece for me. And then sometimes too, so back in the day, very rah in your face was my main method of communication. And now it's not that I'm still very direct. I'm still very honest all the time, but there's a bit more compassion involved in the way I speak now. So that's kind of what I mean by, as things evolve, it's not that my core values change, but the way that I want them to come out does, And so by reevaluating that, then you're always feeling really aligned with what you're doing, because there's nothing worse than someone not understanding that the reason that they feel off kilter is just because they're not lining up with what's going on and what their head wants. It's a real thing. It stops you.
Yeah, it really does. And I think that even if it's not in business, I mean, I think that people that are listening right now that maybe they're not entrepreneurs, they're not small business owners. Well, how is that going to fit with me, Jamie? Well, there you go. Listen to it. Are you reevaluating every so often? Are you being aligned with your ultimate goals? Because alignment is a thing, and it's energy. And as we know, where your energy goes, energy flows, and that's exactly what happens. Wow, we could really get into a massive conversation here with that one, but we'll have to do that in part 2. Thank you so much for coming by. I'm going to have you stick around a little bit. We'll let everybody else go. But before they do, where can people find you?
I am, so just my name, first and last name, jamiethurber.com. And then on Instagram, it's jamie.thurber. And on Facebook, it's just Jamie Thurber.
Perfect. That's awesome. Thank you so much for coming by today. We can't wait to get you on again for round 2. So I definitely appreciate that. Everybody else that's listening, look, if you like this, share it, post it, comment, subscribe, do whatever you got to do. Hopefully it just sits with you, the message. Listen to it again on your way to work, maybe possibly tomorrow or in your workout. Everybody that's listening, thank you so much for showing up to the Provoke Coach podcast. And as always, provoke positive change in you and your peak performance. We'll talk soon.